While everyone is waiting patiently for Shadow of the Erdtree, the DLC for Elden Ring, some of you may have missed that From Software actually did release something in 2023, and it was fantastic. Today we're going to talk about Armored Core 6. There are many things about Armored Core 6 which make it so different from every other FromSoft experience you've probably ever had. The levels are not an open world, they're not connected even, they're individual campaigns. You're faced with some options based off of your different contacts and what they want you to do. You're not really sure how you got to where you are, and you're not even sure if you're 100% human or how much of you is left. So you're this mercenary for hire working for Handler Walter. You've been dispatched to a planet called Rubicon 3. There is this substance called coral which threatens the existence of the rest of the galaxy. And that's sort of where you're dropped in. So one thing about Armored Core 6 is it doesn't pull any punches when it comes to the action. You are just here for a mission, you are dropped into it, you execute it, you exit, and it's on to the next decision, it's on to the next mission. There isn't much downtime, there's practically no downtime except for the time you spend building and changing your mech. It is non-stop action from start to finish. What I would say is the biggest draw for Armored Core 6 is the gameplay. They absolutely knock it out of the park on this one. Armored Core 6, in my humble opinion, has the best gameplay of any game released in 2023. Why do I say that? Because it's unique, it's faster than probably anything else you've played, and it is seamless. Whether it's managing your ammo, managing your stamina, managing your health and your heal packs, and it's not too difficult to find things, but at the same time, it's not about that aspect of the game. This isn't an open world game where it's like, okay, let's go exploring and see what we find. No, you are dropped into an area, it's not very large, it has specific goals in the mission, which may or may not change over the course of the mission, and may give you opportunities to make some decisions which have ramifications on which goals and which alliances you follow up with in future campaigns. But it is straight up gameplay, decisions, and then tuning up your mech. And honestly, I loved it. Now, like many FromSoft games, one of the biggest complaints early on for most people was this game is difficult. Some of the bosses can have you pulling your hair out. In fact, From Software, not long after the launch of the game, had to go in and nerf multiple bosses in the game. In fact, one of the bosses that they ended up nerfing took me, I don't know, 6 hours maybe to do. I did it over the course of 2 days. It was the Sea Spider, which admittedly, what they nerfed about the boss, some of it was damage, but a lot of it was health. It just felt like a war of attrition. I was running out of ammunition, even though I tried to come up with the best start to the battle, etc. So From Software learned that this was pretty difficult, possibly a little too difficult. The first boss of the game, the attack helicopter, that's supposed to be the tutorial boss. In many From Software games, there's a tutorial boss that's meant to just kill you, right? It just kills you, and then you wake up, and it's trying to get you acclimated to, oh, you died, you're going to die, here's what happens when you come back, etc., etc. Not so here. You need to beat this thing, and it will fly out of range, and you're still learning your systems and how to use your 4 different elements of attack. You've got each arm and each shoulder, how to manage your stamina, how to fly in the air, because aerial enemies can be a real pain in the ass to chase after and get damage on. I gotta be honest, it's like throwing you in the deep end right off the bat. So know that going into it. But the majority of people who enjoy FromSoft games are looking for a challenge. I know I am. It's one of the things that's really drawn me to From Software as a developer. In fact, many of the people who picked up Armored Core 6, and probably one of the reasons why Armored Core 6 didn't do as well as some other games towards the end of the year when they started recognizing games, may due largely in part to the fact that several of the bosses, especially early on in the game, are extremely difficult, and many people just dropped it at that point or tried to get a refund if it was on Steam. Again, they've nerfed some of this. It's not in the same situation it was on launch, and I would encourage everyone to give it a shot. But it's still not easy. So the combat is fast and frenetic. You do have the ability to dodge, but the dodge doesn't have iframes. It just kind of moves you where you are. And health does have a quick heal. This is probably the fastest heal in any From Software game. You just hit a button. There is no animation to it other than just the heal on your mech going across it. But there's no kind of warm-up, there's no downtime, because this game is non-stop action. There are many who would say, well, okay, but you crap on games for being, load screen after load screen, and not being connected worlds, and just picking from menus and those types of things. And I get it. But you have to understand that Armored Core 6 is designed this way, not because they couldn't possibly have designed it in an open world kind of situation, but because this is the action flick of From Software games. There are many From Software games where you get into an area and you're moving around and you're trying to find where you're going, and you bumble into a secret you don't understand yet, or a place where you can't really do anything yet, and there's some thought process to it, there's like a development to it, and you have to try to work things out. Armored Core 6 just says, get out there and do what you do, man. Like, just start smashing things and flying through things and trying to get through this level and get to the objective and do what you need to do. And I love it for that, because there are so many games now that just don't respect your time. They'll have you going through empty areas and empty worlds. You're going from so-so to not very good gameplay to long stretches of not much of anything to a cutscene and some conversation and back to mediocre gameplay. And honestly, I'm kind of sick of that. Now, I've played many good games. I'm not saying that all games are like this, but I'm just trying to give you that comparison, because Armored Core 6 says, okay, you see all this boring crap in the middle? Bam! Throw that shit away. It's gone. Now, fight. Get out there and do what you gotta do and get this mission done. Are you gonna see a bunch of deep character interactions? No. Are you going to see these characters with all these emotions and everything? Well, you'll get some of it, but the majority of it is people who are in mechs or things in mechs that are speaking to you, and it's coming across comms and those types of things, and there's sort of a level of disconnectedness to it. But the thing is, you have to understand that everyone that's in this world, that's functioning in this world, at least in this combat zone kind of setup, they survive, they live, they die in these mechs. So you're not going to see a face. But the amazing thing that From Software does is that it brings back characters, and you'll recognize them by their voice, you'll recognize them by their mech, you'll recognize them by how they move on the battlefield, whether they're quick or slow, whether they have a big melee weapon that they use. Their character distinction in just these robots that are running around is kind of crazy.
Sorry to keep you waiting. I've got your back, buddy. Hope you've got mine.
And there's one particular character which you will come across in any playthrough you do. His name is Rusty. You meet him at the wall when he doesn't know who you are, and you're supposed to get together to take down this giant tank boss. It's one of the earliest bosses in the game, and he calls you a buddy, and you're like, who the hell are you calling me buddy? And then the dude pieces out on you in the middle of the battle, and you're like, what the hell is this about? This guy turned on me. But the way that character's developed, the way that he plays through multiple playthroughs, how he comes back, if like me, you play through to see the ending of every possible outcome of this game, you're going to come across Rusty, and every time you do, it's going to strike a chord in your heart and warm it up a little bit. Unless he's your enemy, maybe then, you're going to be on the other end of it. I mean, just to see that kind of character development with all these barriers between you and that character. You're not looking at their face, you're not seeing their reactions, you're hearing their voice through comms. I think it's kind of an incredible thing that they've accomplished here. Now, the overall spectacle of the game, the speed at which the game runs, I mean, there are so many memorable bosses to the game. Balteus is one that obviously a lot of people really struggled with and is very difficult. They have nerfed him. Just the overall look, the way that the moves work, the different move sets. I mean, there is absolutely nothing in any other game that I've played that's like Armored Core 6. And one of the coolest things about Armored Core 6 is the customization menu. And this is one of the things that really separates it from other FromSoft games. There's no leveling, right? There's no upgrading in the traditional sense. It's just pick parts, slap them on, take them off, replace them, make sure they work with your overall energy load. Are they going to slow you down? Are they going to make you faster? And then experiment with all these different parts and find what works. I don't know if I've ever played a game where it is so beneficial to mess around with so many different builds. So as I played through the game, I largely took one build and then I would make changes based off of parts that I upgraded, and I just kind of kept changing and tinkering until I got most of the way through the game. And then there were a few situations where I really needed a mech that was much faster, or God, they're doing so much damage to me, I need something that's tankier. Or in the case of some of the bosses like the Sea Spider that had so much health, I need more firepower. I need to be able to chunk through this thing and keep messing with my build. So by the end of it, I had saved, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 different mechs with all different names to try and separate them out. And then when I would get to a boss where I'd struggle, or an area where I'd struggle, I'd say, well, do I need to get faster? Do I need to get tankier? Do I need more firepower? What do I need? Like one named Super Fast, he was really light and quickly, and he would bounce around, and he would almost never run out of stamina. And then I had another one named Big Boy, and then I had one named Final Form, and he would use a lot of the biggest, most powerful parts that I had while still not being a full tank. And it was so much fun putting together these different builds, saving them all, and then picking from my list of characters, if you will, and say which character is going to do the best considering what this enemy is doing to me. And I thought that was fantastic. It is so plug and play. It is so experimental. Just try everything, man. Just like mess with them and have those options available to you and roll with it, because experimentation is the name of the game, and Armored Core 6 does it better than pretty much any other game I've ever played. As far as the rest of the game and kind of how you'd evaluate it on a general level, graphics wise, I think that the game looks fantastic in some parts, not so great in others. There is definitely a balance that FromSoft is playing with here, because they're trying to keep up that rate of speed when it comes to the enemies, the projectiles, your speed, your mobility, and what's going on. And in order to account for all that, there are some moments where you'll notice that, hey, my mech doesn't look all that amazing. It doesn't seem to have the full weight and size that you would think of something like this robot would be. And those things happen from time to time, but the cinematics are crazy. Some of the set pieces and some of the fights are awe-inspiring. They're awesome. They really give you a sense of scale and make you feel that kind of power fantasy as you're blasting your way through it. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but overall, for graphics, I would say it's on the higher end for the majority of it, with some slight degradation here and there, but ultimately it ends up leaning towards probably more consistent gameplay, and I can't complain about that. The gameplay is the absolute strength of the game. It is so fast, so fluid, it is challenging, but fair. It is, well, mostly fair, especially after some of the nerfs. It is rewarding to get good at. It's something where you really get that adrenaline rush when you're facing some of these enemies. They're so fast, they're so challenging. And because you end up interacting with almost every single one of them, at least, you know, from like mid-game on, you have some history, you have some prior experience with these characters.
Hey, tourist! Having a little trouble? Walter. He asked me to look after you. Don't mind if I do.
Whether it's just listening to them talking to Handler Walter, or you've actually completed missions with them or against them, like a character, like I mentioned, Rusty. I will say there is a bit of a learning curve for the actual controls of Armored Core 6. Luckily, they do use the similar lock-on function to something like the Souls games, and that makes it a lot easier to keep someone centered, and especially a lot of those really fast enemies and fast mechs that are bouncing around. Getting the hang of using all 4 of your different weapons or shields or whatever you have on you with the 4 trigger buttons and kind of being able to understand the HUD of what's going on can take a little bit of time, because you're going to see these different lines and bars and things that are showing you cooldowns, they're showing you ammo, but lots of times you're just kind of slamming on buttons and hoping that stuff comes out, especially early on in the game. And then as you work your way through it, you find, oh, I should use my faster weapons when I'm in close to try and get them to a stagger point, and then I can utilize my big guns to really pack on the damage. Or I can use certain weapons with high impact damage, which will bring the enemy closer to being in a staggered state, which basically means that they're kind of incapacitated for a second and their defenses are down and you can deal a ton of damage to them. The melee weapons take some getting used to as well, but they are so rewarding when you get that really meaty hit on an enemy after you've taken their shields down, maybe with some machine guns or miniguns or something like that, or you've used the pulse rifles and that shield goes down and they go into that staggered state, and you come in with your pulse blade and tear them apart and make a huge dent in their health. I mean, it's awesome. It's absolutely an awesome feeling experience, and they have nailed it in this game. For the sound and music, not a ton of super memorable stuff, but they have definitely nailed the feel of it, and the sound effects themselves, the weapons, the mechs, the sounds they make, the sounds the bosses make, the overall feeling of having that intercom going and all that kind of stuff is all really good. Right on point. I would definitely not complain about any of that. And then the last point about the story is just the strength of Armored Core 6 is how little you know. Now, this happens in many Souls-like games, From Software games. It's become a more common thing to not just give you the whole backstory of here's our hero and he's in love with the princess and the princess blah. It's not that. You get none of that stuff. You're dropped in, hey, you just were awakened and you are a mercenary for hire and we need you to do these jobs and this guy's your boss and let's go, go, go. But as you play through the game, you learn that there are different aspects to what's going on. Basically, there are multiple sides. There are corporations who are trying to take this substance, the coral, for themselves. There is the group that actually lives there, which is called the Rubicon Liberation Front. So that's sort of like the rebels, the people who are trying to fight for their land. And then there's Handler Walter and you're on your own side. And there's some more stuff that I'm not going to get into for spoiler reasons. But basically, when you do your different playthroughs, you're just focused on 3 different goals. Whether it's just the general goal, whether it's everything that's going on with Handler Walter or the Rubicon Liberation Front. And due to different decisions that you make through battle, do you kill someone? Do you let them go? Do you agree to do one mission, or do you take the other side on it? So like, for example, there's like this large crawler type thing that in the very first time you play through it, you're going to take it down. But in another playthrough, you're on the other side. You're actually trying to save it from the other mechs that are attacking it and trying to take it down. It just adds all these different little aspects to it. And this game, the story is based on perspective. Whose side are you on? Whose side are you going to take? They add in some cool elements like the little voice in your head named Air, who is the other side of the coin from Handler Walter, and what's kind of going on back and forth of what's your link with her and how can she talk to you and that whole thing, how that works out. And there's just so much intrigue to it. There's so many different levels. There's so many different sides, and it's all about that perspective. in each of your playthroughs. I loved every playthrough. I loved learning more about the characters and the different sides. I loved when my boy Rusty pulled up and we were fighting side by side. I loved every minute of it. And like I said, if you're looking for that adrenaline rush without all the downtime, without all the quiet crap that respects your time, I don't think you can find anything that is more on point than Armored Core 6. So that's going to do it for today's video. But let me know in the comments down below, what do you think of Armored Core 6? Are you going to give it a shot? As always, I'm Pyrus for Pyrus Gaming, and until next time, I will see you there.